Welcome back to our workshop. I'm working on a cabinet here that has a split down the side, and the reason it's split is because of wood movement. The person that repaired this last time didn't take into account that wood moves. I'm going to show you not only how to fix this, but how to avoid making the same mistake when you're repairing furniture.
As a furniture repair business, we're opening the doors to our workshop to show you the tools and techniques to repair furniture.
What I need to do is take that apart, repair it, and put it back together so I can get this chair in working order.
We give you tips to make your repair projects easier. Let's get into the workshop and start fixing furniture.
This is an interesting cabinet with a flip-top lid. It's something that was probably used as an entertainment unit. There's holes in the back here for ventilation. This cabinet's about 50 years old, and the customer let me know that this side broke about 25 years ago and it was glued again. There's some bracing that's on the inside which is contributing to the problem of why it cracked. And not only did this side crack, but this side over here has now cracked as well. Let me give you a tour of what's going on here. We can take a look at the structure, the modifications that were done to this cabinet, and then we can diagnose what we need to do to make sure this crack can get glued properly and doesn't open again. Let's take a look on the inside, and you can see here what I mean by ventilation holes. So some sort of electronics were in here. And here you can see the split on this side and on that side. The bottom isn't really connected here. It goes inside a slot here, so that needs to be part of the repair. Here on the left side of the cabinet, you can see this piece of wood is a different color. This is a piece of pine, and it was added in. Everything else here is maple. This piece of wood added across this panel has prevented it from expanding and contracting. And that's where part of the problem is here. And let me explain why it's important to let a panel like this move. Wood is a natural product, and it's important to understand that. This is a great book called Understanding Wood by Bruce Hoadley. He talks about how to harvest wood, how to dry wood, and the impacts of wood movement on furniture making and construction techniques. It's important to understand that wood absorbs moisture. So in the wintertime, when you have relatively low humidity, that wood reduces the moisture content and therefore it shrinks in its width. In the summertime, when the humidity gets higher, it absorbs moisture and it gets wider. Wood movement happens across the grain here. So this expands and contracts. There's very little that happens this direction, so you can disregard that. But here on this large panel, this needs to be able to move freely. Otherwise, you can have something happen like this. Because wood movement is impacted by the change in humidity, it also depends on where you live. So there's a map in here that maps out the United States and shows the various moisture content of wood depending on the region that you live in the summertime and in the wintertime, so you can help calculate that wood movement. But be cautious. If you've got something that's in Arizona that's very dry and you move it to the East Coast, it's going to behave very differently there than it would in Arizona. Solid wood doors are a good example of how to control wood movement. The frame here keeps the dimension of the door precisely to what's needed for the cabinet, but the solid wood panel is inside a groove, and that allows the wood to expand and contract through the seasonal changes, but still keep the door at the right dimension. If you'd like to get into the math and science of calculating the wood movement, you'll need to know the species of wood because various species change at different rates, and you'll also need to understand the expected moisture content in that range that you want it to change in. To make things simple, there's a general rule of thumb. For every 12 inches, expect about a quarter of an inch of movement. That's something that you can use in your woodworking shop and on projects like this. So here I've got 17 inches. I'm dealing with more than a quarter of an inch, probably 3/8 of an inch of movement between winter and summer. On closer inspection, this is where the break is, but you can see there's a little bit of a lip right here. This would have been where the original break was, because I can see further down the cabinet, there's a little bit of misalignment in the board. At the bottom here, the cracking is even worse. So this is the break here, but you can see here, there's a split that's starting. You can see back here, there's a split that's starting. So there's likely something underneath here that's also holding it in place. I'm going to start by taking the lid off this and making it more manageable to work with. Okay, so that was easy to take off. This board, I can see a spot here and spot here where it was actually clamped on. And this was free right here. It was just stuck on this one side. So that piece, there's not much space between these two. In fact, if I try to pull this closed, let's see what happens. Yeah. So that joint is almost closed, and this board is touching the front and the back, which means it wouldn't allow this wood to shrink any further than the distance this board was here. Let's take a look at the inside over here. Over here on this side where the crack is, watch at the bottom. I can move it back and forth. It's moving freely. But on this side where the crack is, this cabinet doesn't want to move at all at the bottom. So there's something inside the bottom there that's preventing this from separating. We'll lay this down on the back and see what's going on. There's a block here from front to back. Now there's been a couple modifications here. This is plywood, and plywood is dimensionally stable. It doesn't move. These sides are moving like this, and I can tell that the original craftsperson understood that because there's a glue block right in the middle. What this does is it attaches the stable plywood to the moving side right in the middle. And what that means is, because there's so much wood movement that's happening, this plywood moves in a groove equally on this side and on this side because it's attached right in the middle. So as the cabinet shrinks this way or expands, this plywood is running in a slot. So this is original. There's a new block here with some funky looking glue, and this glue block here, there's something that almost looks like hot glue as well. If you take a close look at the break here, you can see that there's solid glue here on the bottom and on the top, which makes me think there's been at least a second repair here with someone thinking they needed to glue it together. We'll start by knocking this block off. And now the cabinet's free to move. Because there's a couple of hairline cracks here, I'm going to glue those up first before I glue up the cabinet. And to do that, I've got plastic report covers that allows me to put a glue block on top here, and the glue block won't stick to the cabinet. I've also got a fine brush that allows me to work in the glue, and one of my favorite tricks, dental floss. This is one of the splits just to give you a close-up before I glue it. You can see there's a bit of movement there. So I need to open that up and get that whole joint covered in glue. To open this up, I need to use a spreader clamp. So I'll put a clamp on here to grip the cabinet. And then I'll take my regular clamp here, flip it to the other end. And now I've got a spreader. I need a bit more room there. Okay, and now I can open it up. Now I can work in as much glue as I can with a brush. Work it across. And then what I'm going to do is work it in with the dental floss. Now if I wipe off this glue, you'll be able to see that I've got some good glue squeeze out because of all that glue that was pulled into that hole. Let's see. Okay, so we'll take the pressure off the clamp, and there, we've got glue in the joint. And on the inside here, you can see we've got squeeze out, so we've got a fully loaded joint. To line up the parts on the same plane, what I'm going to do is just put a report cover on here, a block of wood, and then a couple of spring clamps. One on the top, one on the bottom. And what that does is it lines up the parts perfectly, and now I can clamp it shut. I've got the cabinet clamped up here so the glue can dry on both of these splits, And over here, I still got a gap. And the reason is, this block here is preventing this side from coming down. So I'm going to remove that block, and then I should be ready for the next glue up once this is dried. Here's the glue I cleared out here. So this gets me to the point where I can put that panel in the groove, and it comes back down. I do have a bit of a problem though. This panel is sitting right at the back of the cabinet, and up here I've got a reveal. So when someone repaired this, they didn't put the panel in the center when they glued these blocks in. So I'm going to have to take the top half of the cabinet off, recenter the panel, glue them in here when I glue in the sides, so that this is centered, and as the cabinet sides expand and contract, this won't come out enough that it's going to fall down. I think that's probably why this glue block was here. The glue's now dried here, so I can take this block off. And the report cover. So all I need to do now is clean off that glue residue. And to do that, I just use some clean water. And that softens up the glue. And then we've got a nice clean side. And there's a close-up of the broken split. Can you tell where it was split? Right here, right along there. So stand this up so I can take it apart. Now both these glue blocks are loose here, but the panel doesn't want to slide out. And if I look inside here, there's a finishing nail right in the middle there. And it looks like there's two in the corner, so those have to get knocked out before I can take the bottom out. I'm just going to block this up here. And the easiest way to deal with these finishing nails is just to use a nail set and drive them right through. Okay, that should do it. I don't know if I got that one all the way, but let's see. Okay, there we go, one side. There we go. Okay, I'm just going to make sure those are set properly. Then I put a bit of spacer in here, and I can put it back together again. Okay, I'll set this on its back now. And let's take a look at these glue blocks. Well, they're in pretty good shape. So what I'm going to do is just clean these up so I've got a fresh wood surface that the glue will adhere to on both these sides here. And then I think we're almost ready for glue up. The last thing is sanding these sides here just to make sure that any glued residue is off of them. When you sand them, you want to make sure that you don't touch that outer corner. So just on the inside here, and that'll make sure you've got a good bond. But if you just touch a whisper of sandpaper on there, you're going to see that joint when it comes back together. To assemble this, I'm going to use hide glue on these glue blocks here because I'm not sure how much clamping I can get on them, and the glue kind of gels and sets well. PVA for the rest. So this is going to go relatively quick because I've got a limited amount of time before the glue dries. And this is why in my videos I typically don't spend a lot of time filming glue ups, because as a one-man shop it goes together in a hurry. I have a spacer here I'm using for the back. Okay, that'll get me to center. And now it's glue up time. Clean up all the glue on the inside and outside of both these sides so they're all ready to set up. Now I've got another glue tip for you, but before I cover that, I want to let you know we have a monthly newsletter we send out. It covers tips and updates and a list of the videos you might have missed from the previous month. So if you'd like to subscribe to that, go to our website, wouldn'titbenice.ca, and there you can subscribe and get this monthly newsletter. How long do you leave the clamps on the cabinet? Well, the answer is on the back of your glue bottle. There are usually 3 times on the back of a glue bottle. The first one is the assembly time, and that's how much time you have between applying the glue and putting everything together. The second one is clamp time, and it ranges on these between 30 and 90 minutes, and that's when you can take the clamps off the piece. But all 3 of these say the joints won't be coming to full strength until 24 hours. So on a cabinet like this, where you might be moving it afterwards and twisting it a bit, it's really important to leave it for 24 hours in these clamps to make sure you've got the optimum strength. I can take the clamps off now. And what I'm going to do is clean off the side of the cabinet. And I'm just using clear water for that. And what that does is just takes off any residue that's on here left over from the glue. Now on the inside of the cabinet, this is the line here that I repaired, but I'm seeing some residue here. This must have been that previous repair that that customer is talking about. And the easiest way to get rid of old glue is with a plastic razor blade. If you've never seen these, they're great. I think they were made for the auto body industry, where people had wraps on their cars and they needed to take them off without damaging paint. But they're perfect for this. They're not going to scar the wood, and it just flakes it right off. I'll leave a link to these in the video description if you'd like to buy some. I can now remove the spacer from the back here, and this is where this was nailed down. It's important that it's not nailed down because these sides need to contract and expand. So this gives us some room for some contraction, and that way this shelf is going to be in the center from here to the front, and it's not going to fall out front or back. The last step is to put the top on, and this cabinet's back in working order. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. That tells YouTube this is a quality video, and it'll help our channel grow. If you haven't subscribed yet, click over here, click on the bell icon, and you get notified every time we publish a video. Thanks for watching Fixing Furniture.